we thought we'd provide this opportunity. You've heard primarily, and you're going to hear primarily from staff people today, but we thought it would be good for you to hear from people who have been or are in your shoes, and that is elected officials, elected city council members. And we're very happy and thankful for our volunteers to join us today. I'm going to start first with one of my former bosses. Jim Bauer was a council member on West Carrollton, and while he was there, he also served as their representative on the Miami Valley Communications Governing Board, and Jim served 2 terms as president of that board. So, very knowledgeable person. He is retired, but he was a recipient of the 2014 Brother Ray Fitz Award, which is given by the Montgomery County Family and Children First Council, because he does, now that he's more fully retired, he continues his work as a special advocate, guardian ad litem for the Montgomery County Juvenile Court. So, but we're glad Jim can join us today. Thank you. Now with my current boss, Joanne Rao is a council member with the city of Centerville, as you may have heard Mayor Compton say earlier. She's been there since 2014, and she has a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from the Ohio State University. And she's lived in Centerville for 31 years. She also represents Centerville as one of the Centerville representatives on the MVCC board, and this year she is currently the president of that board. So I have a former president and a current president with us today. Now the next 2 are not members of the MVCC board, but they're still good people. Just kidding.
Wait, what part?
First off, we have Zach Upton, and he is currently in his 2nd term as a council member in the city of Beavercreek. He was first elected in 2011, re-elected 2015, and he has championed, amongst the other items he's worked on, a change to the city charter to establish a direct elect mayor, whereas before it was the vote of the council, top vote getter from the council. And he works for Synchrony Financial. He's been there for 11 years. So, welcome.
Thank you,
Mr. Upton. And I hope I get this right, because my name is never pronounced right, and so I try to get everybody else's name right. But Hempfling, yeah, I thought I was going to mess that up. Judith Hempfling is a council member at Yellow Springs. She's been there since 2005 to 2015, and I'm sorry, 13, and then she was re-elected in 2016. She's also served as council president for Yellow Springs, and has been a political activist for many years, mostly on issues of peace and human rights. And in Yellow Springs, she is one of the leaders of the Save the Farm effort, which culminated in the preservation of a 1,000-acre farm located at the edge of the village. So you can see we have what I would call medium-sized cities in comparison to like Cincinnati or Dayton, and we also have the smaller cities represented. So they should be able to give you a good background, a good understanding. They're going to give you a brief presentation, and then they'll be glad to take questions that you may have. So we'll start with Jim here, and they'll pass this around.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see you. I see you've all upheld the tradition of all politicians will go anywhere for a meal. So it's good to have you here today. One of the things when I got elected to city council, what seems like a long time ago, they give us an orientation and they take us around to the different people. And one of the things that I wondered is, what's important? Well, how will I know what's important when people come to me? So I had a wise city manager sit me down and answer that question for me. He says, I want to tell you something. And he said, you need to remember this. He said, if the toilet's flush, the water comes on, the leaves get picked up, and the snow gets plowed, 99% of the people won't pay any attention to you at all. He was very right on that. But he says, that 1% that picks up the phone and calls you, they've taken an effort. He said, pay attention to them, because they've probably got a real problem. And he said, don't blow them off. Go see what the problem is, talk to them, and he gave me, and then bring it to me and I'll help you. So keep that in mind. 99% of the people will not pay any attention at all to you. It's a good thing to know. But that 1% that calls you up, pay attention to them. Go out and shake their hand. See if their fence is falling down. Whatever it is the problem is, go see if you can help them. That's important. The second thing I wanted to impart upon you is one of the things I learned. I came to government from business, somewhat like our current president. And one of the things that stymied me, and I'm sure has stymied him, is the speed of government. The speed of government is what I would call in reverse. When I made a decision as a businessman, something happened that day, immediately. When we make a decision as a government official, nothing happens for a while. And there's a reason for that. We make better decisions when we make them slowly and deliberately and with a group. And oftentimes, we get a better decision by collaborative thinking. I like to think I made good decisions as a businessman, but they weren't always all right. We try to get them right as government officials. So, that's another important thing. The speed of government is slow. Do not get frustrated with it. Things will get done. It just all happens in its own time. And there's not a darn thing we can do to change that. And the last thing that I wanted to talk to you about is this. You've all been elected, and you're all gonna sit with a group of people. Don't just sit with a group of people. Find your voice. You're part of something. And the only way that you can be part of something is to speak up. So often I see council members that are elected, and I never hear their voice at a meeting for the first year. And it's okay to learn, but find your voice. You were elected because you have something to contribute and something to say. Find that voice and say it. It's important. Thank you for your time today.
Hi. I'm sorry to pick on your last statement, but I have to pick up on it. Not pick on it, pick up on it. Learning your voice was tough for me. I was one of those introverted child, types who just rarely spoke up ever. So I have found that speaking up is not only slightly difficult, but sometimes I'm just slow. And many a council meeting I have struggled to get my words out, and then eventually you just blurt it out and you feel like a real idiot afterwards. So I have to say I have learned a lot about finding my voice, and I give a lot of credence to our mayor, our current mayor, and our past mayor for making sure that everybody had a voice at a meeting and actually would poll us if we were unusually quiet. So I appreciate that. And also picking up on that is during a meeting, I think it's important for you to explain your vote. That's also something I've learned after being on council. When you have a position to take, often if it's a sensitive issue, a new development going in, some infill, there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of emotions going on. I think it's helpful for everyone to hear why you're voting the way you're voting and make that part of the record. So that is helpful to everyone. And kind of the other thing is I came on to council after being on planning commission for a short while. And that was a wonderful learning ground. So if you get the chance to come from that background, that's very helpful. You learn a lot about your codes. You learn about Roger's rules. You learn about how decisions are made and how collaboration is achieved. And if you haven't had that background, I would encourage you to go and sit in on a few of those planning commission meetings and watch how those deliberations take place before something comes to your own council meeting for you to vote on. So again, thank you for coming, and I'd be happy to answer any questions as they come up. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hope you guys are doing well. I want to thank the NVCC for putting on today's event, and Maverma as well for co-hosting. I thought lunch was great and really appreciate being part of it. One of the first things I learned as a city council member was to thank the host committees for anything that I do. So I impart upon you, as you show up to different events and speak, make sure you thank those people that are putting it on. So my name is Zach Upton, and I'm in my second term at Beavercreek City Council, and I really look forward to hearing some of your questions and trying to lend some of my experience to you. As a new council person, what was very important to me was getting to know not only the team of people I was going to be working with, my other elected officials, but also our city staff. More so than just the city manager, but getting to know our department heads, some of their assistants, and then taking another step further, I went to our various commissions and boards and got to know some of the presidents and chairs of those organizations as well. Because while we're elected officials and we do what's best for our community, I found, at least in my community, I won't speak for everybody, a lot of times my community, our staff members did what was best for City Hall and our staff. And a lot of times those things coincide with one another. What's good for City Hall is good for our community. But there's some times where they weren't in conjunction with one another. So I would ask you, as you learn over the next several years and become more of a leader in your community, keep in mind, ask yourself, is this what's best for a community, or is this what's best for our administration? And because you'll find, I think sometimes the answers aren't always the same, and that's something I've tried to bring my voice to on council. And I'll stop our city manager and say, no, that's not the way our community needs to go. And then I'll reach out to our park board or our planning board, who are also citizen members of our community, to get their input, not just staff's input. So I would, in my short couple minutes here, that would be the one thing I would ask you to take away, is to reach out to all of your team members, because you are a team with everybody that's leading your community.
Thank you. I have my timer. I don't want to go over 6 minutes. Okay. Well, I first want to say congratulations. You have taken up a noble task. In a democratic society, the role of the elected representatives of their communities are a key role, and it's a noble role. I know there's a lot of anti-government attitude out in our country right now, and I always wonder, what do you want if you don't want a democratic government? Do you want something else? I mean, you want to go back to, I don't know, kings and queens or what? It takes a very engaged citizenry to have a well-functioning democratic government, and it's messy. That's just the nature of democratic society. There are different points of view. People have different needs. They have different values, and you debate those things. And hopefully, and to be effective, you do it in a way that is respectful, that sticks to the issues. Personal attacks are always a negative thing, and they often can happen at a local as well as a national level, and we can see in our whole society now how there's this great division, and it's because we've allowed ourselves not to stick to the issues and not to recognize that we're all part of one whole, that it's very important that we stay connected, that we don't demonize one another in order to, as a country, be able to move, do what's the best that we can do with our kind of government. The council manager form of government, you probably heard a little bit about it. Oh, I'm sorry. I wanted to thank NVCC for including this panel, because it doesn't make sense to me that newly elected officials would not hear from their peers, because we play a different role than the staff do. And in fact, they work for us, as you mentioned. And so, we need to hear from one another and to understand what our role is. In the council manager form of government, you may already have heard this, the first big city that adopted this form of government was Dayton, Ohio. It was in the early 1900s. And it was the idea that you would have your elected officials, elected leadership, who would be the policymakers, pairing up with the administrative experts who would help us and carry out the policies that we developed. And often the village managers make recommendations about policy. Now in Yellow Springs, policies recommendations sometimes come from the council. I don't know how widespread that is, but our job is not to defend the recommendation. Our job is to debate the recommendation with input from citizens. So I see our role, our primary relationship, as with citizens. We, have a great council in Yellow Springs. We debate issues in a very respectful way. There's a lot of collegiality. There's collegiality with our staff. But I still think in terms of our role, our primary relationship is to citizens. Now, does that mean all citizens don't agree? So what's really great is if there's enough of representing of the differing points of view within the community that really everybody in the community can feel like there's somebody up there that represents me. And our citizens actively participate in our discussions at council. We make lots of space for that, and we listen. I think part of my role, if I have a strong opinion about something, I'm going to try to convince you of it. Now, in the process of that debate, you might convince me, or we might come to some middle ground. And I think that kind of process is excellent. But having differing points of view it's really important that you respect the individual and you stick to the debate is not about you're a good person, you're a bad person, but that, it's about the issue, that you stick to that. I think it's very important that we help the citizens part of making the case for what we stand for, is we're helping citizens to understand what the issues are. And then so that they can be active participants in an educated way so that they've got good information. That doesn't mean they're going to agree with you, but that they have good information. And that's part of our role, is to be talking to citizens, and particularly at times when there's expertise in the community that you're going and having those conversations. A lot of times I'm talking to people because I'm not sure what I think, and I'll turn to the people that I have some common ground with and have them help me sort of think through issues. What else? I think it's important to try to surface the differing points of view rather than to suppress them, and not to be afraid of that kind of rigorous debate. Too often it can get ugly, and so people are even afraid to go there. But it doesn't have to. And when I was president, Yellow Springs had a pretty difficult political culture. And one of the things when I was the president, I kept re-emphasizing, it's okay to disagree. It's okay. I don't take that personally. You don't have to agree with me. We shouldn't take it personally, that somebody vigorously, and sometimes citizens, when they have a disagreement, they're not as skilled maybe at expressing it, so council members can take offense. You just got to get a really thick skin and try not to take offense, because citizens often are nervous when they're standing in front of us. It doesn't come out quite right, or they're upset, and so they say things, and we have to give the space for it not to come out perfectly, and try not to take offense. I mean, sometimes it makes sense to correct some misunderstanding, certainly, but and obviously if somebody's calling you names and so on, you might want to say, but that's not true about me. But anyway, just trying to have a thicker skin and just and being willing to hear it, even if it's not said in the most skillful way. I think that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, now's the fun part, the questions and answers. So who wants to volunteer first? Because we're taping this, I'm going to bring the microphone to the speaker, and then I'll bring it back up here. So who's got the first question? Yes, sir.
Well, someone had to be first. So it might be, this is one of those questions where I'm going to give you the answer first and then ask the question. So it might be obvious that it's best or most appropriate to actually go to citizens, you just regular Joe, just to get the feedback that you want. So the question is, depending on the circumstance, is it sometimes, I think to Judith's point, to go to those commissions or boards where you have folks that have more of an expert opinion on a particular subject matter, as opposed to regular Joe, or is it a mix between the two?
Who's going to volunteer to go
Yeah,
first?
I can take it.
Zach?
Thank you. That's a good question. I think it really comes down to the topic, right? So if we have a new development coming into our area, and I know that our planning commission has seen it already once, and maybe it was a mixed recommendation, a 3-2 vote to approve, I may go out to the planning commission and get some feedback from those members to see what the real thoughts were in that meeting. If I can't watch it myself, we have all ours videotaped. Then occasionally I've gone out if I know the area of that development, and I'll ask neighbors if it's a residential area coming in or something abutting the residential area. Try to get some feedback that way. But a lot of times you'll find the average Joe comes to you. If it's going to impact them, if it's in their backyard, you've heard of NIMBY, I'm sure. If it's in their backyard, they're going to come to you and give you the average Joe's feedback. So sometimes I try to get more than the average Joe's feedback, but also from someone that's not going to be impacted by it, if that makes sense.
I would just say I agree everything you've said there. I would just also point out that staff is very invaluable with some of those, the background, maybe the history. If you're talking about a development, maybe they can tell you other developments that were proposed for that site, which would lend some information for your decision making. So as you do reach out to any of these committees or groups, or if you have like a downtown business group or something of that sort, participate and listen, but also engage staff in some of those conversations. And if you have a liaison position with committee members or commissions associated with the city, participate. I have a couple I sit in on. I go as a representative, but I try to stay out of most of their discussions. Maybe I'll ask a question, and they usually ask me for feedback before I leave, which I think is very nice. Also to give them any other insights they might want that impact the kind of decisions they're going to be making. So, just engage, and it's probably the easiest way to put it.
Questions?
Next question.
I think when I ran for council, I had a platform. This is what I stand for. So I tend to look to, I thought a lot about it, and I got elected on that. So that makes me feel I've got some support for those things. But if there's something in particular that we're trying to figure out, and I usually will go to people who are like-minded initially. But then if I'm hearing from people who disagree, I listen to them. But if they have wrong information, maybe we just disagree. Okay. Just listening is, I think, important, even if you disagree. And then I will talk with them about why I disagree. Maybe they'll say some things that will adjust my position. So that's kind of how I do things.
Okay, good. Next question.
Yes, Judith mentioned that you have open dialogue so that the citizens can speak. I don't know how you do it. I know in our community that we allow 5 minutes for people to speak. You've got to control it or the meeting can go on forever. And a lot of times we just take their input, we do not respond back, and then we use their input to add to the discussion when the council is going through the evaluation process. But I'd like to know what the different communities here, what kind of limits you put on talking to the citizens, and if you're talking about doing it just during a council meeting, or if you're talking about doing it as you run into citizens on the street, or if they call you, or that kind of a thing.
We have 3-minute limits on what an individual can say. If there is a lot of interest, our meetings go longer. I mean, that's pretty much it. If we've been hearing the same things, we'll ask for, okay, we might reduce the amount of time and say, we want to just hear new ideas. We don't respond to each input of the citizens, we listen, but then hopefully in our then we have a discussion afterwards again, so maybe we've presented, we've listened, and hopefully we would respond in our responses to some of those concerns, or hopefully all those concerns.
We also have a stated limit that we ask citizens that come to the podium to stay under. But depending on how many people are in the chamber that night, that kind of thing, there's a lot of latitude on whether we stick to them or not. You can develop a long meeting by responding to questions. So as a council, we always would take in all the input that we would listen to it, but we would not respond to it. If you come out for your meeting and the chamber's full, put on your stone face because you're in for a long night. And but you will gather a lot of input. Sitting on the days is like sitting as a judge at times. You sit in and you hear the responses from all the parties, and you look at everybody and you say, I'll take that under advisement, and you go on. So that's how we handle that.
I think ours is similar. I think we have a minute limit, but I'm never actually aware of it because it's pretty flexible. I have to say for Planning Commission, though, they do get up at the beginning of that meeting and give rules for commenting. And I think it's helpful for people to hear that there are rules. And they normally comply quite well. And we've only had a few outbursts on an occasional basis. You don't want people clapping and laughing in the background and those types of things. So they do try to keep it as a civil discourse.
We also have, honestly, a pretty strict 3-minute rule for citizen input. And we word it that way, citizen input, not citizen dialogue, to kind of limit that back and forth between council and the citizens. I also have that same rule when my mom calls me. I say, Mom, you got 3 minutes. But no, just kidding. We do keep it pretty rigid within the council chambers. Outside of that, it's really, what are you comfortable with talking to? Are you comfortable having a coffee session, an informal session with a small group where you can just let them go and have that dialogue? Or is it better that you meet them in Kroger and have a quick 5-minute discussion? It's really your comfort level. I've done both. I hosted a coffee with a councilman at a park, and I sat there for 4 hours, and I was berated. I got nothing out of it because they were just angry, and they came to council a couple weeks later when the issue was before us, and they said the same thing again. So I'm not sure I gained a whole lot out of it, not even goodwill, They didn't like me. It is what it is. But whatever you're comfortable with as far as your interaction one-on-one with.
But yet they drank your coffee.
Oh, absolutely. And all my Dunkin' Donuts were gone.
I think we need to have a session on how to, when you come across a constituent in Kroger, you can do it in 5 minutes.
Right.
I was never able to get by with less than 30, so that's a good session right there. We'll have to keep you get you scheduled to do that.
I'm running quickly. Thank you very much for the opportunity of being here and the people and the group that are putting on this occasion for us. I want to ask all four of you guys, think back right after you got elected, the very first time, or if this is your first time, and you went in with eyes all bright and bubbly, and you went to your first council meeting, and it didn't go like you thought it would go. What kind of advice could you give that firstborn that's really frustrated and ready to just throw in a hat and just don't know how to get out of a situation, or it seems like everything is just piling on you? Take in consideration that this is a part-time position and you're still holding down a full-time that actually pays the bills. So if you could give me any advice of how you handled it, what you could suggest, are there steps to take, and I'll give it to you at that point.
Well, this will be interesting. I can sympathize. I think most people can. Our first council meetings don't always go as we think.
Yeah, that hardly ever happens. Sooner or later, you're going to make a mistake. While you're sitting at that dais, you're going to answer here when you should have answered yes. All of us have done it at one time or another. You will make a remark that just didn't come out the way you wanted it to, or you will be intimidated. The easiest way to get past that is put a smile on your face. Do not let them see you sweat. And meetings all end. They do. And you get to come back for another one. Having sat through 300 or 400 of them, I quite know. So put a smile on your face, laugh about it, and go on. If you're unsure, ask the guy sitting next to you, because they've probably done this a few more times. And it'll all get better. Keep coming back, and pretty soon you're going to be the one with all of the experience, and somebody else new will be coming along. So it's a good time. But don't let them see you sweat. Smile at them and go on.
I made a practice the first, actually I'm still kind of practicing this. I never watch myself. So I know I've made mistakes. I probably am worse on myself than anyone else, but I never watch it. I don't need reinforcement that I really screwed up. But when it comes to a decision that maybe you want to see go a different way, if that's a kind of a different angle to your question, I didn't know if that's what you wanted to address or not, but I've found, that if you have work sessions, which, we have work sessions pretty much every Monday, one right before the council meeting and then 2 others in a month. And that's the time to really try to figure out what everybody's thinking and try to get all their thoughts about it. It goes back to that no surprises rule. You don't want to be surprised either. So if a council member has a very differing point of view, you really want to get them to expose or, bring that up during those meetings. So you can all listen to it. You might want to change your mind. So use those work sessions to try to ask questions and get those thoughts out there.
If I could second that thought on work sessions, in my experience, the work sessions are an excellent place for dialogue, for questions, for knowing what your colleagues are thinking and where the direction might be going. Going back to my first meeting, real life example, so I just got elected, sit down at the first meeting, and our very first vote was on implementing a brand new income tax in the city of Beavercreek. Like, hey Zach, welcome aboard. Are you voting for it? I'm like, whoa. And that was a lot of heated discussion, not only amongst the council, but also our citizens that were there as well. So that went absolutely nothing like I thought it would, because I was like, hey, everyone's going to welcome me. We're going to go through the minutes. We're going to talk about the budget. Nope, first vote was income tax. And true to how I had campaigned, I voted that way. And afterwards, I was kind of taken aback by some of the process. So I actually called some of my colleagues and said, hey, walk me through this. I know this is how it happened, but why was this the procedure? Why was this the first topic of the day? Why wasn't there something in front of it? How was that roll call vote done? You know, why was I the 5th vote out of 7, which made it a very important vote? You know, and I just asked a lot of those questions. You are new at this. Play it up. Seriously. No one's going to fault you for saying, hey, I'm the new guy here. Tell me why we do it this way. They'll fault you if you say, hey, I'm the new guy and it's your 7th year on council. I tried it last week. It didn't go over well. So play it up. You know, don't be afraid to make rookie mistakes. I will tell you, read the packet of information before the meeting. And now that I've got some experience, I've seen some of my newer council members come on, and they are asking some of the questions that have already been answered because they haven't read the packet. And we have to kind of correct them. And that's okay. You're allowed to make those rookie mistakes. But just read that packet ahead of time. Know what the topic of the day is. If you have questions about the packet, ask an experienced colleague of yours. Ask a staff member that might be spearheading it. You know, get some additional background ahead of time if that can help make sense. And you won't do that until you've made that mistake one time. You know, and then you're like, you know, I should ask about this ahead of time. So real life example is just ask people even after it's happened.
When I first got on council, we had 5 members. 4 members were much more conservative than I was. I ran on a much more progressive, statement of what I was going to do. And I had a lot of support in the community, but I was a minority view on the council. That was hard because I couldn't even get if I made a motion, I couldn't get a second, so we couldn't even discuss it. It was that kind of thing. Yeah. So I had some very good support, people I talked to afterwards. The best piece of advice I got was, don't pay so much attention to the council. You need to look to the citizens. So when important issues, and were very important issues that were happening in the village at that time, I got an email list of citizens. I let them know what was going on. I would get people out to meetings. So what I could do is I could prevent some kind of legislation from happening. I couldn't make anything happen, but I could stop some things, because if you have a room full of citizens, it makes it hard for council to do things that's really unpopular in the community. 2 years later, we had another election, and I looked for candidates who were more like-minded. They won. I became the president of the council. So that, and really the council has become much more an expression of the community. We just weren't getting the candidates to run because it was such a difficult process in the village. A lot of people wouldn't even think of running. But once once the culture of discourse, became much more respectful, we started getting a lot more really good candidates running, because people didn't want to run because it was just kind of an ugly discourse, and not any individual's fault. It just sort of became a problem. So that was how I handled it. But I do still probably have in my old computer a resignation letter. I never handed it in, but I was at that point at one point where I thought I can't do anything. So that was the way I handled it, and in the end it worked pretty well.
Yes, and I had a similar situation when I was first elected. I ran just to run, thought I could offer something. I didn't run against any of the sitting council members, but they thought I was. And I beat an incumbent. Fortunately, she wasn't well liked, so they didn't hold that much against me. But they thought I was, for some reason, some of them thought that I was a threat to them. And so and when you're in that kind of a situation where they don't know you really don't know them, you've maybe watched them, but you only know maybe 1 or 2 personally, and the rest you don't. It gets back to learning how to be friends. Be quiet when you don't. If you're not sure, be quiet. until you are sure. Support, if they do something that you can support, make sure you're very vocal about it. They'll remember that. And you just build relationships and be upfront with them. So, like I said, if you're in that kind of situation, I'd encourage you to consider that, because, boy, after that first meeting, when I felt my hair being plastered back because of all the heat that I got, I was like you, boy, or maybe I need to resign because this isn't going to be fun. But it worked out very well in the end. Any other questions? One more.
I just was wondering, the council I sit on, I ran on transparency, and right now all we have is the city minutes, and those get posted to the website after they're approved, so at least 2 weeks after the meeting. So I ran asking if we could videotape the meetings and put it on the website. So I know you've spoken and said that you were videotaped. I was wondering if all of you could speak on that and what the pros and cons are of that.
That's a real good question.
Yeah, part of the problem when I came on is, it was very hard for citizens to know what was going on. I mean, now our packet is on the website. It's on, when the council gets it, the public gets it. So everybody, it's very easy. Before computers, that was part of the thing, was people need the information ahead if they're going to be part of the discussion. We tape it. I don't think it's an issue at all. We're happy to have it taped. It's very available to our citizens. If there's private things to do with businesses, obviously that's an executive session, so that's not an issue. So, we've done a very good job at getting the information out to citizens, and they appreciate it.
Yeah, so we have, like I said, everything is videotaped, and transparency's really got to be part of your culture. Your organization's culture's got to get behind that transparency issue, and making all of that available, from the packets to the minutes, in a timely manner. And if you feel that there's not something transparent, maybe in your budget, be a champion of that to make that more transparent. What I found successful is breaking it down to small steps, right? Asking the city manager, hey, how simple is it to put the packet on the website for citizens to read? And if he says, well, we just got to get someone to load it up. Okay, can we start doing that? Then find out what kind of feedback you get. You'll find your colleagues may have been there a long time, so they have no reason to want to do it. But if you just ask the question, no one's going to fight you on it. And if they do, just start asking them all the time. Well, what can we do to bring this up more for the citizens? To the chagrin of a couple of my colleagues, when I didn't think we were being transparent about a topic once, and this is not something I recommend to most people, I went to social media. I said, hey, here's the topic, here's what my thoughts are, what do you think? I didn't say that council was being stupid. I didn't say our mayor didn't know what he was talking about. I said, here's my thoughts on an upcoming topic, what are yours? And put that out there. My colleagues saw that, and in their comments at a meeting, at one of the following meetings, kind of echoed what the citizens said on my Facebook page. So I was like, well, I got that out there now, didn't I? So don't be afraid to take a step yourself.
We do videotape. We don't videotape the work sessions, just the actual public hearings. And certainly don't have any issues with that. But they can be very long meetings. So probably the only negative is if somebody really wants to pay attention after the fact. At what point do they dial in at hour 3 or hour 4? Before they actually hear what they want to hear. But I'm all for it. Pardon?
It's not on YouTube?
It is on YouTube, yes. And in fact, the MVCC is the one who actually tapes those meetings as well as puts it out there. So
Our meetings are broadcast live, thanks to MVCC, and there's pluses and minuses to that. There have been some meetings I wish they would lose that tape, but by the same token, it allows people to see that, one, you're participating. It allows them to know exactly what your point of view is. But it also allows them to see you as human too. One of the first things, oddly enough, one of the first things they tell you, learn what to do with your hands. And it's very true. So there's pros and cons. Sometimes you can broadcast a lot of ugly on television too. So, but it is a way to be transparent. As government officials, we're not trying to hide anything. Almost all of us are serving without an agenda. We're serving because we want to help our community. And it's the only reason we're serving. I know most people don't believe that, but it's absolutely the truth. That little bit of compensation they give you isn't going to pay your bills, that's for sure. And somebody told me, well, there's got to be some graft on council. Graft? We're lucky if we can get somebody to buy us a meal, let alone anything else. So transparency is a good thing. And if you can find a way to put your meetings in a forum that the public can see them, I highly recommend it because I think it's great. I think it's a good part of the process. And you will be absolutely amazed at how many people watch those darn things.
I know it.
I've had people call me from other communities. I saw you on TV. Uh-oh, what was I doing? Were handcuffs involved? So, it's a good thing. And unfortunately, with the MVCC council meetings, those are broadcast also, so you really did have to clarify, what was I doing? Was they come around, they put us on parades, they broadcast ribbon cuttings. There's a lot of stuff out there if the public's willing to look. So it's a great thing.
Oh, I just want to add one more. Just one more thought. Open mic. That is one of the negatives. It's real easy to forget at the end of the meeting, or if you're having a break in the meeting, or that some of these mics carry really well. That if you have any discussion, or even just telling anybody jokes or whatever, it could all get picked up. So that's probably my biggest weakness. Anybody else?
I would like to add just one more comment on transparency away from video. One of the things that we feel we do very well in Beavercreek is we do very few ordinances by emergency. So everything is 3 readings. I know other communities, emergency ordinances are their normal. And that only leaves opportunity for one point of input from the citizens. We try very, very hard, and I can speak in my 6.5 years now, we've had 7 emergency ordinances that we've needed over the years. And some of those are by statute, hey, this has to be an emergency. Okay, we'll do it. But we try very hard to do 3 because that's 3 points of public input.
That's a great idea.
Well, I'm sorry we're running out of time.
One important thing that you make is it allows people to watch it at their convenience.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. Because on MVCC, like I said, it's not only on the web, but it's on our channels, and it usually runs each council meeting runs at least 4 times. So anyway, we could probably do this again for another hour and still learn more, but as I said, we're trying to cram that 20-pound bag of potatoes into a 2-pound bag. So let's give our panel a thank you all very much. We appreciate both your service and your help today.
Thank you.